जय हरिनाम संकीर्तन की जय। ओम ज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपकथा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। वन्दे श्रीगुरु श्रीयुता पदकमलं श्रीगुरु वैष्णवांश श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगण रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपदा सहगणा ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च हे कृष्ण करुणा सिन्धु दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपेश गोपिका कान्त राधाकान्त तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्यैव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो। श्रीकृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासदि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। मुखं करोति वाचा पङ्गुं लङ्घयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं श्रीगुरुं दीनतारिणं परमानन्दमाधवं श्रीचैतन्य ईश्वरम्। So reading from Canto 4, Chapter 2, text number 19. Here we go. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय
निषिध्यमानस् निष निषिध्यमाना ससदस्य मुखे 19 निषिध्यमाना ससदस्य मुख्यैर् दक्षो गिरित्राय विसृज्य शापम् तस्माद्विनिष्क्रम्य विवृद्धमन्युर्जगामकौरव्यनिजं निकेतनम् निषिध्यमान ससदस्य मुख्यैर्
निषिध्यमान ससदस्य मुखे
दक्षो गिरित्राय विसृज्य शापम्
दक्षो गिरित्राय विसृज्य शापम्
तस्माद्विनिष्क्रम्य विवृद्धमन्युः
तस्माद्विनिष्क्रम्य विवृद्धमन्युः
जगामकौरव्यनिजं निकेतनम्
जगाम कौरव्यनिजं निकेतनम्
निषिध्यमान ससदस्य मुखे
निषिध्यमान ससदस्य मुखे
दक्षो गिरित्राय विसृज्य शापम्
दक्षो गिरित्राय विसृज्य शापम्
तस्माद्विनिष्क्रम्य विवृद्धमन्युः
तस्माद्विनिष्क्रम्य विवृद्धमन्यो
जगामकौरव्यनिजं निकेतनम्
जगाम कौरव्यनिजं निकेतनम् विसृज्यमान ससदस्य मुखे
निषिध्यमान ससदस्य मुखे
दक्षो गिरित्राय विसृज्य शापम्
दक्षो गिरित्राय विसृज्य शापम्
तस्माद्विनिष्क्रम्य विवृद्धमन्यो
तस्माद्विनिष्क्रम्य विवृद्धमन्युर्
जगाम कौरव्यनिजं निकेतनम्
जगामकौरव्यनिजं निकेतनम्. Prabhu, you want to recite? You have to go, right? So ecstatic.
निषिध्यमाना ससदास्य मुखे
निषिध्यमान ससदस्य मुखे
दक्षो गिरित्राय विरज्य शापम्
दक्षो गिरित्राय विसृज्य शापम्
विनिष्क्राम्य विवृद्धमान्यो
तस्माद्विनिष्क्रम्य विवृद्धमन्युर्
जगाम कौरव्यनिजं निकेतनम्
जगामकौरव्यनिजं निकेतनम्. Thank you. Nishidyamanaha, being requested not to. Saha, he, Daksha, Sadasya Mukhyai,
सदस्य मुखे
by the members of the sacrifice.
by the members of the sacrifice.
Daksha,
Daksha,
Daksha, Giritraya,
गिरित्राय
to Shiva,
to Shiva,
Visrujya, giving,
giving
Shapam, curse, Tasmat, from that place,
from the
Viniskramya,
Vinishkramya,
going out, Vivirdhamanyu,
Vivirdhamanyu,
being exceedingly angry,
being exceedingly angry.
Jagama,
Jagam,
went, Kauravya,
Gaurav,
O Vidura, Nijam,
Nijam,
to his own, Niketanam,
Niketanam.
home. Translation purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada ki.
Jai, Jai Prabhupada.
Maitreya continued, my dear Vidura, in spite of the requests of all the members of the sacrificial family, Daksha in great anger cursed Lord Shiva and then left the assembly and went back to his home. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Anger is so detrimental that even a great personality like Daksha, out of anger, left the arena where Brahma was presiding and all the great sages and pious and saintly persons were assembled. All of them requested him not to leave, but infuriated, he left, thinking that the auspicious place was not fit for him. Puffed up by his exalted position, he thought that no one was greater than he in argument. it appears that all the members of the assembly, including Lord Brahma, requested him not to be angry and leave their company. But in spite of all these requests, he left. That is the effect of cruel anger. In Bhagavad Gita, therefore, is advised that one who desires to make tangible advancement in spiritual consciousness must avoid three things: lust, anger, and the mode of passion. Actually, we see that lust, anger, and passion can make a man crazy, even though he may be as great as Daksha. The very name Daksha suggests that he was expert in all material activities: anger, lust, and passion. Lord Chaitanya therefore advised that one be very careful not to offend Vaishnavas. Again, Lord Chaitanya therefore advised that one be very careful not to offend Vaishnavas. He compared offenses toward a Vaishnav to be to a mad elephant. As a mad elephant, as a mad elephant can do anything horrible, so when a person offends a Vaishnava, he can perform any abominable action. As a mad elephant can do anything horrible, so when a person offends a Vaishnava, he can perform any abominable action. Again, Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So, very great transcendental Brahmanas are sitting before me. So I take the dust from their lotus feet and attempt to speak something on Srimad Bhagavatam. My obeisance to all the devotees who are also joining online. My prayer that I'm not qualified to speak Bhagavatam, but my prayer is that whatever Guru Prabhu wants to speak, whatever he wants, I pray that I can become his instrument. And beg the blessings of all the devotees, including especially His Grace, Kishore Prabhu. Hare Krishna. So, it's a very wonderful purport actually. Many things came to my mind when I was reading this purport. So, spiritual life is very rare, is very wonderful, but one has to know how to execute it. So, the goal of our life is to realize that we are not this body, when we are the spirit soul. So the spirit soul has nothing to do with anger, lust, passion, all these things. The soul doesn't have anything to do. But because we are engaged in this body, therefore we are in this compromise situation where we have to deal with all these things. So this is from Bhagavad Gita. Actually, the more we advance in spiritual life, the more the scriptures become more and more profound. Like Bhagavad Gita, when you're reading initially, it may have seemed very kind of abstract, but now the more and more we read, we see it is so relevant to us. It's so relevant to us because actually, in order to please Krishna, in order to overcome the forces of the senses, the most difficult accomplishment for any sadhaka is to not be disturbed. Because when one's mind becomes disturbed, and that's what we're speaking about, anger means the mind is disturbed. So when the mind becomes disturbed, then it becomes very difficult to deal with ourselves. So therefore, Gita, especially Bhagavad Gita, and of course Bhagavatam and all the books of Prabhupada, but especially Bhagavad Gita, speaks about the technicality of how a sadhaka can transcend, at least go beyond the modes of passion and ignorance and come to the platform of goodness. So this is very important because unless one understands one's present situation, one cannot take the next step in spiritual life. So Bhagavad Gita actually shows it's like there's a need of a saintly person or of a there's a great need for a saintly person or a great devotee for us to understand our position in this material body. So Bhagavad Gita is a perfect mirror which actually shows us uh, where we are, where we need to go, and how we can go. So Bhagavad Gita is really, really incredible. When a living entity comes in contact with, this is from Bhagavad Gita, when a living entity comes in contact with the material creation, his eternal love for Krishna is transformed into lust in association with the mode of passion. Or in other words, the sense of love of God becomes transformed into lust as milk in contact with sour tamarind is transformed into yogurt. Then again, when lust is unsatisfied, it turns into wrath. Wrath is transformed into illusion, and illusion continues the material existence. Therefore, lust is the greatest enemy of the living entity, and it is lust only which induces the pure living entity to remain entangled in the material world. Wrath is a manifestation of the mode of ignorance. These modes exhibit themselves as wrath and other corollaries. If therefore the mode of passion, instead of being degraded into the mode of ignorance, is elevated to the mode of goodness by the prescribed method of living and acting, then one can be saved from the degradation of wrath by spiritual advancement. Trividam narakashedam dwaram nashnamaatmana kama krodha tata lobhas tasmat etat trayam tyajet. There are three gates leading to this hell: lust, anger, and greed. Every sane man should give this up, for they lead to the degradation of the soul. So, let's first actually see the context of what's going on. So, in this verse, as we just read, what happened is Daksha cursed Lord Shiva. And what was Lord Shiva doing? Lord Shiva was absorbed in thinking of the pastimes of the Lord. And in a previous purport, Prabhupada says that Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma are both on a higher position than Daksha. Prabhupada says they're demigod, devatas. Therefore, there is no need for Lord Shiva to actually pay respect to Daksha. And here, many members of the family, many members of the assembly, including Brahma, who was presiding, was a leader of all the sages and pious and saintly persons. He himself, uh, asked asked Daksha not to leave, not to become angry, and not to leave. But Daksha, despite the request of all the sages, of the saintly persons, and Brahma himself, he left. So this is the right now the situation, and Lord Shiva has not reacted at all. So one small thing that we can learn is that as a devotee, we are powerless. We cannot deal with our own reactions, whether it's good or bad. Therefore, the best thing to do is to not to react. That's the best thing to do, is to not to react, not to take any action, especially in a confusing situation. It's a confusing situation. It's like, think about it, if someone comes and starts shouting at you out of no reason, for no reason, you didn't do anything to that person, just shouting at you. And so what is the best thing to do at that time? To not say anything. That is the best thing, because two things happens. One thing happens is that if we had any previous bad karma, then that becomes nullified. And second thing also is that when you allow another person to, if they are so disturbed, to vent out their anger, of course, it's not the best thing to do. Prabhupada is saying anger is very detrimental. But if you allow that person, then, and if you don't speak anything, then what happens is that that person will slowly, you will calm down, you will come to his senses. The worst thing you can do when someone starts shouting or when someone becomes angry is you also retaliate. So then it becomes very difficult for both you and that person to come out of that. And just pacify your mind, saying that okay, that person may have had less sleep, that person may be very disturbed due to other situation which is beyond your comprehension. Mm. Like I've seen sometimes if devotees are upset or devotees, actually when I reflect that, oh, perhaps this devotee is behaving like this, or maybe because he had a very difficult situation at work, he maybe had a very difficult situation at home. Like just think about it, picture a situation, if you have not eaten, you have not slept, you know, at home all the family members, they are not happy with this person for some you know no mistake of his, all these reasons are there, and his work and his sadhana and everything is he's battling everything. So if he actually becomes upset, then it is quite understandable, it is not surprising, because at the end of the day, this is very important. Before we address the topic at hand, it's very important to understand that we are trying to achieve something which is way beyond our capability. So what we're doing is, we're on material platform, we are coming to devotional life, and then we're saying now you step onto spiritual platform and work on spiritual platform. But the problem with not the problem, the challenge is that it's very difficult to always stay on the spiritual platform. But unfortunately, we have to, right? And unfortunately, we have our conditioning is such that we have not. So definitely there will be times that we will not be able to be on the spiritual platform. That's for sure. So therefore, we have to understand and we have to empathize with other devotees, and we have to try to help them to help them. So, in this purport, um, there are two things before we come to the context: is a material attachment and spiritual attachment. So, in material attachment, ego is the center. Ego is the center. Friends and enemies are based on who speaks my glories and who does not. And when the ego becomes satisfied, it results in pride. And when the ego is frustrated, it results in anger. Right? And since ego is rarely satisfied in the real sense, therefore anger is very common. So this material when you're cultivating any material attachment, the result is anger, because ego is the center and it's very difficult to satisfy the ego. It's very difficult to satisfy the ego. You look at when you look at the perspective of material attachment. When you look at the perspective of spiritual attachment, Krishna is the center. Friends and any friends, or our association is based on who is surrendered and who is not surrendered to Krishna. And then the more devotees glorify Krishna, the more happy we become. And so the result of spiritual attachment is we become very blissful. So this is the difference between material attachment and spiritual attachment. So material attachment means anger is inevitable, and spiritual attachment means you will become blissful. Right? So first of all, this incident is very amazing. This incident is very wonderful, very special, because I mean, of course, I'm not trying to glorify, but I'm just trying to examine. So first thing is, Daksha's assumption was completely wrong. If you see analyze, that was because it's just an assumption. There's nothing that Shiva didn't say anything. Even Shiva was not even thinking anything. What Shiva was wrapped in meditation. There's nothing Shiva said. There's nothing wrong, right? Next thing is that he did not give Lord Shiva any chance to speak or to say anything. He just came to the conclusion. That's it. He just saw externally and he came to the conclusion without even giving him a chance to speak anything. And the last, most astonishing of all astonishing things is that Lord Shiva did not retaliate at all. He did not speak anything. Jai Jagannath Baldev Subhadra Shri Shri Radha Govinda Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So this is amazing. Krishna's devotees are so, Radharani's devotees are so amazing. If you see also, remember in Bhagavatam Chitraketu, when he was cursed by Parvati, he did not retaliate. So this is the amazing example of devotees that they don't retaliate. Chaitanya Charitamrita, it is said that if one, I mean, it's a very high platform, but if one speaks anything to, when one depends on anyone, right, then he is neglected by Krishna. And this is the standard of Chaitanya Charitamrita. This is the standard of our parampara. Right? What is our parampara? Standard is Kaviraj Goswami saying a real Vaishnava, he does not ask anything from anyone. He simply depends on Krishna and chants the holy name. And what is the example is Madhavendra Puri. He was starving, he was hungry, he did not tell anything to anyone. And Krishna came personally. So it's a very high standard. Chaitanya Charitamrita states that if you depend on anyone, you will be neglected by Krishna. So anyhow, so this incident is very, very interesting. And we can apply this to our life also, that how sometimes we will make a completely wrong assumption as to the truth. And the next thing is, the next principle from this that we can draw is that we shouldn't chastise anyone in public. Because when you chastise someone in public, I mean, the only person who has the right is authority or a guru. Otherwise, when you chastise someone in public, then what you're doing is you are breaking the relationship. Like Radheshyam Prabhu says, you win the battle but lose the war. I mean, something I can't remember. So basically, enemy died, but good people died also, something like that. It's like you rooted out the unnecessary, you rooted out the necessary also. So
Operation successful, patient died.
yeah, operation fully successful, but patient is no longer alive to know that the operation is successful. So we should never do this thing. But whenever we correct someone, because the thing is, I'm speaking for myself, I'm not a pure devotee. It means that I am not acting based on what Krishna wants at every moment. So it's not fully beneficial to that person. But when we take that person in private, and we create a mode of goodness, we create a divine environment, pay obeisance to that person, and very humbly say that, Prabhu, you're doing seva very nicely, but this one thing is there. Can we correct it? Can we correct it? So then that builds the relationship. But in this case, if you correct in public, you chastise in public, then it breaks the relationship. And it also shows to other devotees that this is the standard relationship between devotees. We can always justify, of course, there are devotees I know who speak without ego, who speak without, who are pure, and they are definitely authorized by Krishna to speak in the way whatever way they feel appropriate. But in general, when we behave with devotees in a very appropriate way by there's a thing that we should glorify in public, chastise in private. So when we follow this principle, and other devotees seeing this also, they gain great faith in devotee relationships. Know that I will, because it's very difficult to sacrifice one's ego. But so when devotees see that, that they're honored, they're respected, and at the same time, they're also uh, they are assisted in their spiritual life very carefully, then they gain great faith in the association of devotees. So that's why this is a very important principle. So we can look at this incident from two angles. The first angle is Daksha, from Daksha's angle. So first thing is he's very expert. That's what Daksha means. But the danger with being expert, Kunti Maharani says, uh, one who is on the path of material progress, trying to improve himself with respectable parentage, great opulence, high education, and bodily beauty, cannot approach you with sincere feeling. So, without taking shelter of devotees, when we try to improve even skills in Krishna consciousness, then it results in disconnection with Krishna. And we cannot call out to Krishna with sincere feeling anymore. Because the ultimate goal is to call out to Krishna. The ultimate goal of our devotional life, Prabhupada says, is to develop that feeling towards Krishna, is to convey, communicate that feeling to Krishna, that how much we want to serve him, how much we want to love him. So that is the whole purpose of Krishna consciousness, as said by Srila Prabhupada. So therefore, in order to protect that feeling, to protect that disposition, to protect that mentality, one has to take shelter of great devotees of the Lord. And then this is another danger. This is another line that Daksha said. All sages, brahmanas, and five gods present, please hear me with attention, for I speak about the manners of gentle persons. I do not speak out of ignorance or envy. So this is another thing, that when one is doing a mistake, he he himself he cannot understand. But others who see him, only they can understand. So that's why one has to be willing to listen, and one has to give authority or Shiksha Guru, senior devotee, the room to correct him, to help him, because otherwise he has to learn very hard. Like you see in this case, Daksha, he has to learn a very hard lesson, unfortunately, although he is a very exalted person. Mm. So this is Daksha's condition, right? And Daksha is agitated. Why Daksha is agitated? The root of agitation is that he's trying to become successful materially, but because he's not surrendered to any devotee, therefore he's agitated. And that agitation is coming out in the form of anger. Actually, there's nothing wrong with Lord Shiva. There's no problem. But why suddenly Daksha is becoming so angry? Because internally he is agitated. As Prabhu says, when the mind, body, and soul, he's quoting Shilranath Maharaj, that the mind, body, and soul are not aligned, then what happens is there is a disturbance, and that disturbance manifests outside in so many ways. So, is a learning for us that sometimes it may happen, like happens to me, happens. I mean, I have experienced sometimes due to less sleep or due to sometimes the mind becomes very cranky, or if you made some offense, the mind starts finding fault with devotees unnecessarily. So at that time, we should understand that yes, the mind is disturbed right now. So let me deal with the mind by chanting, by hearing, by taking enough rest, etc., etc. So let me not vent that anger out. Because once you vent anger, what is the problem with anger? When you display anger, then it pollutes the whole body. And then it takes a long time for us to go, you to beg forgiveness, pray to Krishna, and it takes a long time before you can come back to your same state again. Right? So that is the danger with anger. So that's why when we see, you know, devotee is an expert physician. So first we have to diagnose the disease within ourselves. So when we diagnose, okay, there is a disease, there is a problem. So we have to deal with it in a very, very um, mode of goodness way. And we have to go to the root of the problem, address the root of the problem. And the root of all problems is that Krishna is not pleased right now with me. Or to put it in a better way, I am not connected with Krishna. I am disconnected with Krishna right now. That's why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling. Because if I'm connected to Krishna, if I'm surrendered to Krishna, there's no problem. Even in the midst of so many anxieties, I'm all right. So this is from Daksha's situation. From Lord Shiva, see Lord Shiva, this is an exemplary example. He is absorbed in thoughts of the Lord. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Yoginam api sarvesham mat gatenam taratmana shraddhavan vrityumam samayukta tamogata. And of all yogis, the one with great faith, who always abides in me, thinks of me within himself, and renders transcendent loving service to me. He is the most intimately united with me in yoga and is the highest of all. That is my opinion. Mhm. So such a person is absorbed in thoughts. Lord Shiva is absorbed in thoughts of the Lord, and he is serving the Lord also. Mhm. So that is the greatest benefit of to of always thinking of Krishna. When one is always thinking of Krishna, then the greatest benefit is that one always feels that Krishna is protecting me. Raksha iti Vishwaso. Krishna is my only protector. So Lord Shiva displayed this, that he was completely convinced that Krishna is my protector, and therefore he was not disturbed. He is not disturbed. So this is the essence of Krishna consciousness. That is to always think of Krishna, to never forget Krishna. Now this is the essence, right? So how do we cultivate this practice? I'm speaking for myself. How do we cultivate? So the first thing is that every sadhana or every seva we do has two aspects. The first aspect is in that seva, what is the mood behind that seva? What is the absorption in that seva? How much meditation on Lord, on the Supreme Lord, are we doing during that seva or during the sadhana? The second very important thing is when we finish that seva or finish that sadhana, what is the flavor that comes out of that? Because depending on the kind of flavor that comes out of that, accordingly we will carry that flavor to the next activity. So Krishna consciousness means being very sensitive. If we are very sensitive towards Krishna and to Krishna's tadiya, very personal, very sensitive, then we will always be Krishna conscious. Our consciousness will always be elevating. But the moment we start becoming impersonal, insensitive, then our consciousness degrades, right? Consciousness elevating goes to spiritual platform, consciousness degrading goes to material platform. So personal tendency, personal seva, personal thought process leads to elevation, impersonal thought process, insensitive thought process leads to material consciousness. So the essence is, how can we be attentive? If we are always attentive, we can always um, live in the present, and we can always make progress. So how can we be attentive? So this is something very nice from Bhagavatam I just came across. The secret of knowing Bhagavatam is mentioned here. No one can give rapt attention who is not pure in mind. Speaking about myself. No one can be pure in mind who is not pure in action. No one can be pure in action who is not pure in eating, sleeping, fearing, and mating. But somehow or other, if someone hears with rapt attention from the right person, at the very beginning, one can assuredly see Lord Sri Krishna in person in the pages of Bhagavatam. This is Prabhupada. So, again, if we want to be pure in mind, we have to be pure in action. And if you want to be pure in action, you have to be pure in the regulative principles, in eating, sleeping, fearing, and mating. So this is very important thing to consider. So if we do this, then we can always be in mode of goodness. And if we are in mode of goodness, or I should not say just mode of goodness, but if we are always trying to think of Krishna, always trying to develop the feeling of love for Krishna, loving feeling towards Krishna, always trying to please Krishna, then what happens is that we are always protected by Krishna. We become very peaceful, we become very happy. And by Krishna's mercy, internal progress becomes more and more intense. Actually, internal progress is the only thing which matters. But for us to make internal progress, externally we have to be very careful. Unless we're careful with our activities and with our words, we cannot be careful with our mind. And unless we're careful with our mind, we cannot think of Krishna. So thinking of Krishna is very important. Thinking of Krishna is not just while chanting or while reading or while hearing, but thinking of Krishna means not only just act of thinking, but the atmosphere that we create. Unless we create a suitable atmosphere for our mind to think of Krishna, how will you think of Krishna? If you're making the mind in mode of passion, making the mind mode of ignorance, how you can think of Krishna? It's very difficult. So therefore, the environment is very important, and the mental environment we create is also very important. So we have to make the analysis. What is helping me to go closer to Krishna? What activities are helping? What is not helping? So the first thing that is very important as devotees, before I speak about aparadh, the first thing is we have to cultivate gratitude. Recently, I was hearing this on the Ram was telling how gratitude is so important. So, what does gratitude mean? Gratitude means feeling indebted to Krishna, Krishna's paraphernalia, and Krishna's devotees for allowing us to make progress. So, we may not feel grateful, but even if we just communicate that no, I am very grateful, I am very fortunate, that what that gratitude does is that gratitude it builds energy, it builds stamina to actually engage in sacrifice, and only by sacrifice can we become intense in our bhakti. And only when we become intense in our bhakti can we cry for Krishna. And only when you cry for Krishna can we see Krishna, can we feel Krishna. So being grateful is very important. So it starts with, okay, I'm living in this temple. So Kishore Prabhu is, sheltering me. So I should feel very grateful to him. Means I have to do what he says. I have to try as much as possible to do what he says. Simple, right? I am grateful to Srila Prabhupada. I'm grateful to this temple, which means whatever the activities Prabhupada institute, like the morning program, I feel grateful. Therefore, I have to attend. And sometimes I may have to push myself. I may be tired, I may be whatever, but no, I have to push myself. Why? Because I'm grateful to Prabhupada. So if you're really grateful means you'll make sacrifice, right? So the same way in the home, yes, I have my family. So I'm grateful to my family that they, by their association, are able to perform devotional service. So I also have to serve them in a practical way, in a very practical way. So this is a very important principle. Right? Uh, so this is very important. Because Prabhupada says in Bhagavad Gita also that unless one has a very good relationship with devotees, one cannot chant properly. So the goal of our spiritual life is actually to chant properly. So we have to be very, very careful, very, very careful. That's why there always should be very open communication, very open communication. And if there is no open communication, if you cannot have open communication, just quote Prabhupada. Just quote what Prabhupada says. And if when you quote what Prabhupada says, the other person should not quote something else what Prabhupada says. That's not the way it should happen. Okay, Prabhupada said that, I'm just giving a very exceptional example. Prabhupada said you should chant 16 rounds. No, no, this letter is there. Prabhupada told this devotee, you're working very hard, don't need to chant. No, that's not the way to counter. But we have to take Prabhupada's words very seriously. Right? Because whatever Prabhupada said is for our benefit. And Prabhupada spoke about everything. If you simply follow what Prabhupada says, then your devotion for sure. And I'm speaking on the realization of pure devotees, not my realization. That if you follow everything Prabhupada says, definitely your devotion will become spontaneous. And once your devotion becomes spontaneous, you don't need anything. As a soul, you got Krishna now. So what do you need? So now we'll just quickly speak about aparads. Three types of aparad: thought, word, and action. Of course, action is the worst. But even in thoughts and words, we should be very, very careful. Very careful. Mm. So a famous example of how words are so dangerous is that how the sons of Brahma, Marichi, how they ridiculed Brahma, right? Even though Brahma had committed a blunder, but because they ridiculed him, they had to take birth in the family of demon, right? So we have to be very, very careful. Uh, and then the six types of aparadh. Kills a Vaishnava, blasphemes him, feels malice toward him, does not properly greet him upon seeing him, becomes angry with him, or does not feel joy upon seeing him. Right? So these are six things. Of course, time, place, circumstance. You're cooking in the kitchen, someone comes. You cannot greet him. You're busy, so that's not an aparadh. Or you see someone, you're thinking of something, meditating. Then you don't. No, that doesn't mean that you don't feel joy. No, all this means is that one should not have any negative vibe towards a devotee. One should always have the desire to serve a devotee. That's all it means, right? And then the last thing is Mahaprabhu himself said that I will personally deliver anyone who avoids criticizing others and once chants Krishna. Right? One chants Krishna. I vow that this is the truth. This is how powerful it is. Chaitanya Bhagavat Mahaprabhu is saying, once chants, it does not say every time, even once chants Krishna and avoids criticizing others. So this is how powerful Mahaprabhu's mercy is. Mahaprabhu's mercy is very, very powerful. Very powerful. Mm. So this is the essence of today's discussion, that avoiding aparadh is not when it starts manifesting. Aparadh is avoided when you have a good relationship with that person. When you have an intense desire to serve that person, then only you can be free from aparadh. If you are addicted to glorifying someone, glorifying their qualities, only then can we be free from aparadh. Otherwise, we are sowing the seed of aparadh. And then later when aparadh manifests, then it's very difficult to control. Of course, we should control, we should not speak, but prevention is better than cure, right? So we will end here. Anyone has any question or comment?
Very nice class, Prabhu. Thank you. You were sharing that when we are performing any seva, any service, there are two aspects. One is the mood, and another one is the flavor.
That after you've done the seva.
The after we do the seva. Can you give some example on like what do you mean by flavor?
So flavor means at the end of doing any seva, how is your consciousness?
Isn't that same as mood or the mood you perform the service and after the service?
Yeah, there are two different things, bro. Because the thing is that uh, when we're doing a particular service and doing sadhana, sometimes even though our mood may be good, it may not come out the way we want. Like for example, chanting, right? That's the best thing. It's when you're chanting, you're really struggling, you're trying your best, but you're seeing that wow, my mind is not so much absorbed. But if your actually your mood is right, and if you're trying your best, then the result of that chanting after you chant is a consciousness will elevate. So what the point, the reason I'm separating these two is that if we are conscious not good after doing a seva, we should correct. I mean, my conscious is never good, but I'm just speaking from my own perspective that we have to correct. Maybe something was wrong in this, maybe some offense, maybe there is some way to improve. Like that's a perspective.
The flavor is not, you're talking about your, like, in one specific way you deal with Krishna. That's not what you mean.
No, what I mean to say is the consciousness, flavor of the consciousness. You know, and actually, in according to the flavor of your consciousness means how deep your consciousness is. To that extent, that much you can meditate on Krishna. It's just like this. How to say? To the extent that you eat, prasad is good. To the extent that you eat nicely, to that extent you will have energy. Of course, the material body is not very accurate in that conversion, but just an example.
But the one over it, there's a problem, right?
But in spirituality, yeah, there's no problem. There's no overeating. There's no upper limit.
Thank you.
Anyone online has any question or comment? Okay, nobody has any question or comment online. Please forgive us for anything wrong, inappropriate. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya vacha. Paitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavyo namaha. Ananta koti vaishnava Jai Srila Prabhupada.